Well, now I've done ranking every 2D Mario boss fight, so naturally I have to do ranking every 3D Mario boss fight. This video took even more work to make, believe it or not, and I'm really excited to share it with you as it's one of the videos I'm most proud of so far on my channel. So anyways, without further ado, let's rank every single 3D Mario boss fight there is. Number 82, Chill Bully. Have you ever beat a boss fight with the push of just one button? Well, now's your chance. Just jump and then dive, and this guy will already be defeated. Because the floor is made out of ice, when Mario dives, he'll just continuously keep sliding and eventually push Chill Bully off the stage. If you don't do that, for whatever reason, this boss fight's more just kind of a regular bully fight, but the floor is made out of ice. It's really easy, to be honest, whether you use the exploit or not. Number 81, Big Mr. I. You know the Mr. I enemies in this game? Yeah, it's that, but bigger. All you gotta do is run around him like he's a regular Mr. I, and you'll be fine. It's super easy and doesn't present any more challenge than any other Mr. I. Number 80, Big Boo. All you gotta do is ground pound this Boo like it's a regular Boo, except this time you gotta do it 3 times instead of 1. It's really easy, honestly, and it's not gonna be any more challenging than just a regular Boo. Number 79, Big Bully. What's with this game and just putting the word big in front of different boss fights? Anyways, Big Bully is just a regular bully that you gotta knock off the stage into the lava. It's pretty easy, can be challenging at times, but as long as you're careful, you'll be alright. Number 78, Prince Bully. Finally, we're onto a boss fight that isn't from Mario 64. Prince Bully is very similar to Big Bully, except instead of knocking him off a stage, you knock him into the clear pipes, and then you kick him. These two could be interchanged, considering it's up for debate which is actually harder, but I just put Prince Bully ahead of Big Bully because I find the boss fight just to be a little bit more enjoyable. Number 77, Womp King from Super Mario 64. If for whatever reason you don't know, this boss fight's actually glitched. If you jump and ground pound as Womp's about to hit you, you can just hit him instantly with no effort. And even if you don't do that, all you gotta do is wait for him to try and crush you, and then do like a side flip, get on top of him, and then ground pound him. So really, you're only saving yourself like 3 seconds. This boss fight's really easy, and it's okay, don't get me wrong, but again, it's just way too easy. Number 76, Proto Piranha, or Polluted Piranha. I've heard both names, but I'm gonna go with Proto Piranha because that's one I hear more often. Proto Piranha is basically a piranha plant made out of goop. This piranha plant won't really attack you all that much, but you gotta watch out for those slimy things that jump at you for most of the Proto Piranha boss fights. All you gotta do is make sure you spray water in Proto Piranha's mouth when it's open. It's a pretty easy boss fight, but if you don't know what you're doing, it can be a little challenging. Number 75, Shadow Mario. Shadow Mario will literally just run around like a madman. All you gotta do is chase him down while spraying him with water, and eventually he'll just give up. It's pretty easy, but sometimes if you're not careful, Shadow Mario can run into you and do some damage. But you'll be fine. It's a pretty easy boss fight. Number 74, Fury Shadow. Fury Shadow takes on the form of Luigi and will just run around, similar to Shadow Mario. These two could be interchanged, but I put Fury Shadow ahead of Shadow Mario just because attacking him is a little bit more challenging considering you don't have the Flood Pack on you. So, yeah. This boss fight's just a little bit better for that reason, but again, they could be interchanged. Number 73, Fake Bowser. If you're wondering why I'm calling this Bowser boss fight Fake Bowser, it's because every time you fight this Bowser, it's never the real Bowser. If you pay attention after you hit the switch, Bowser actually turns into an enemy right before he dies, meaning it's not the real Bowser. Anyways, just had to get that out of the way. This boss fight has a few different variations, but each one just has to do with you running to hit a switch while Bowser tries to stop you. They get progressively harder and more interesting as well, but for the most part, they're not super challenging, and you should be okay, especially if you have a Tanuki Leaf. Number 72, Boom Boom from Super Mario 3D Land. Boom Boom is just as easy as he is in the 2D Mario games. All you gotta do is let him spin around for a bit until he gets dizzy and then you jump on his head. Or if you're a pro gamer, you'll just jump on his head while he's still spinning around. There are a few different variations of Boom Boom in this game, but each one's very easy and it's not much of a challenge. Number 71, Boom Boom from Super Mario 3D World. This boss fight's virtually the same, and I even debated on not counting this one on the list because of how similar it is to the 3D Land one. But what makes this one slightly different is that Boom Boom will go into his shell after you hit him and will bounce around, and sometimes he goes slightly invisible. I guess transparent is a better word to use considering you can still kind of see the outline of his shell. But anyways, I decided to include this one anyways. That one difference makes it slightly more challenging. And again, there are a few different variations to this boss fight, but they're all super easy. Number 70, Pom Pom from Super Mario 3D World. Pom Pom in this game will split off into a bunch of different clones of herself. Each time you hit her, there are more clones. What you gotta do is you gotta jump on the head of the actual Pom Pom to do some damage. This is extremely easy because all you gotta do is look at their ninja stars, and whichever one is pink is the real Pom Pom. So you really won't have to worry about Pom Pom ever attacking you in this game. It's a really easy boss fight, and it'd be a lot more challenging if the Pom Poms actually attacked you instead of waiting for you to hit one of them for like 5 years. But it's okay, I guess. Number 60, I can't say that. Pom Pom from Super Mario 3D Land. This boss fight's actually more challenging than the 3D World one, not by much, because Pom Pom will actually throw a boomerang at you from time to time, and when you hit her, she'll chase you around trying to slam the ground. It's pretty okay. I mean, it's not super challenging, but I guess it tops the 3D World one and the Boom Boom boss fights as well. So, yeah, let's just move on. Number 68, I-Rock. This boss fight has so much potential, but that's all gone to waste because it's so easy to cheese. All you gotta do is constantly be hitting the eyeballs of the rocks the second their hands open up, and doing that's really easy. It's not much of a challenge, and if it was just a little bit harder to actually attack the hands, then this boss fight would be a lot more fun. Number 67, Boss Boulder. This boss fight's pretty good. There's a big giant boulder that's moving around on this battlefield area, and you gotta jump on smaller boulders and pick them up because you're superhuman, and throw them at the bigger boulder to do some damage. It's okay, and it's not the best boss fight of all time, but it's not bad and makes for a pretty enjoyable experience. Number 66, King Kathunk. This boss fight's pretty interesting, but the problem is it's super easy and it takes forever for King Kathunk to actually move. If it was a bit more fast-paced and maybe had a bit more difficulty, it would be so much better, but it's okay, I guess. It just, again, it could have been improved on to be more interesting. Number 65, Chief Chili. Chief Chili is one of the 3 boss fights that are exclusive to the DS version of Super Mario 64. I didn't include every boss fight in Super Mario 64 DS, just the 3 that are exclusive to that version because none of them are changed at all. Anyways, moving on from that, Chief Chili is kinda similar to Chill Bully, except not as easy to cheese. The stage is still made out of ice, and it's actually a lot bigger, but Chief Chili actually presents a challenge because you do have to worry about accidentally getting knocked off by him. Every time you knock him off the stage, he will bounce around, making it smaller, making it slightly more challenging to stay on the stage. It's still a pretty easy boss fight, but it's not that bad, and it's pretty fun too. Number 64, King Bob-omb. King Bob-omb was the very first boss fight you ever fight in any of the 3D Mario games, and he's not bad. He's very basic, don't get me wrong, but all you really gotta do is grab him from behind, throw him, and you're good. He's not super challenging, but there are times where you gotta be careful of him grabbing you, but other than that, you'll be pretty safe with this boss fight. Number 63, Wiggler from Super Mario 64. Wiggler will just run around the stage really fast and you gotta jump on his head 3 times. It's really easy and isn't much of a challenge. Number 62, Monty Mole. Monty Mole will shoot bombs out of a cannon at you, and what you gotta do is you gotta spray them with your flood pack and throw them back at him. I don't know what spraying the bombs with water is gonna do, but apparently they make them grabbable or whatever. Anyways, it's a pretty fun boss fight. It is very easy, but it's okay. Number 61, King Boo from Super Mario Sunshine. Of all places, King Boo will fight you in a casino, which means that the boss fight has a lot of casino elements to it. The floor is constantly spinning in 3 different directions, and you can ground pound purple parts of it to stop it. That's really the best I can describe it, my apologies. King Boo will use 3 slots to try and attack you, and you gotta hope that it comes up fruit 3 times in a row, so that way you can grab peppers and throw them at King Boo so that they land on his tongue and it gets burned. It's actually pretty creative when you think of it that way. King Boo will also use the slots to try and attack you using different enemies. Certain enemies can be spawned if they appear 3 times in a row on the slots. This boss fight is pretty cool, but the slots make it way too randomized. This boss fight can be over in 2 minutes or it can be over in 10 minutes. It depends how lucky you are. I get that's what they were going for, but it kind of ruins it a little, and this boss fight would have just been better off if it was less luck-based. I really wish they did this boss fight in a kind of different way, so that way it wouldn't be so luck-based, because it's really creative and I enjoy it so much, but it suffered from the randomization of it. Number 60, Pee-wee Piranha. Pee-wee Piranha is the first boss fight in Super Mario Galaxy 2. Pee-wee Piranha will basically just run around the stage and you gotta hit his bottom 3 times. May I point out that Mario was literally attacking a newborn baby without even the slightest bit of hesitation? That's very dark. It's always been a thought that's creeped me out about this game. But anyways, this boss fight compared to Dino Piranha is a bit worse because you gotta try and catch up to Pee-wee Piranha more because you gotta hit his bottom and not his tail. So it makes things a bit slower and a bit less kind of fast-paced, I guess. It just could have been a bit better, and it's just not as good as Dino Piranha was, so it kind of makes this boss fight come off as lazy. Number 59, Dino Piranha. Dino Piranha is basically the same as Pee-wee Piranha, except again you gotta hit his tail instead of his bottom. This makes the boss fight feel just a bit more strategic than Pee-wee Piranha's, and it's just better, okay? But again, Mario, why are you attacking a newborn baby without hesitation? You're not even questioning it, you're just attacking him. What is wrong with you? Number 58, King Boo from Super Mario 64 DS. This boss fight's pretty cool, actually. You'll be playing as Mario, and weirdly enough, your reflection in the mirror will be Luigi. It's a pretty cool detail. Another reflection in the mirror that's different than the real world is that you can see King Boo. King Boo in your world is invisible, but you can still see King Boo through the mirror. That's the entire gimmick with this boss fight. You gotta ground pound King Boo 3 times without being able to see where he is, except for the mirror, as I just said. And it's not super challenging, really, but it's a very interesting boss fight, and it's kind of a cool idea. Number 57, Baron Burr. This is actually a pretty cool boss fight. It's on the easier side, but that's alright. Basically, you're in this frozen pond. Well, it's not really frozen exactly, but if you jumped in for a swim, you'd be taking some damage. In the middle of this pond, there's this kind of pillar, I guess, where Baron Burr is. Mario can't get there without jumping in the water, and obviously that's not going to go well for him. What you gotta do is you gotta go into this little cave-ish area of the pillar, whatever, you know what I mean if you played the boss fight, to get the ice flower so that way Mario can walk over the water without having to jump in and freeze to death. Mario will then wall jump his way to the top of the pillar where Baron Burr is and attack. Again, it's on the easier side, but it is really cool. It just would have benefited more if it had a bit more challenge. Number 56, Womp King from Super Mario Galaxy 2. Womp King makes his triumphant return from Super Mario 64. He even says all the same stuff he does in that game. It's a really cool throwback, and he's much more threatening this time around considering he's a lot bigger now, and you can't just jump and ground pound it and clip right through him. He'll also spawn a bunch of little Womps that will chase you around. It's a really cool boss fight, and I'm glad that Womp King made his return. Number 55, Spewart. Spewart is definitely the easiest out of all the Broodals. He'll just spit a bunch of poison around the stage, but you can very easily clean it up with Cappy. All you gotta do is jump on his head when he's done, and that's it. The boss fight is extremely easy and won't be much of a challenge at all. Number 54, Topper. Topper is the leader of the Broodals, but he's still very easy to defeat. In fairness, most of them are. All you gotta do is wait for him to finish throwing his hats around the stage and you just jump on his head. He has a few other attacks, but none of them are really that noteworthy. He's alright, but he's not gonna pose much of a challenge. Number 53, Rango. Rango is very tall, and he's so tall that you basically need to fly up in the air to jump on his head. He'll throw his hat at you, and you have to turn it over using your hat. Once you do that, there's a spring thing that appears, and you can jump on that, and then he'll stupidly just stand still looking for you, and you just jump on his head. Honestly, the boss fight isn't that challenging, but I give it bonus points for giving it some creativity. Number 52, Harriet. Harriet is the last of all the Brutals. Harriet will chuck a lot of bombs at you, and you gotta chuck them back using Cappy. Once you do this, you can jump on her head. She'll then retreat into her hat, because that's a thing you can do, and fly around the stage like it's a UFO, dropping bombs everywhere. Also, I've never heard a laugh so scary in my life. Harriet laughs like a literal crazy person. It's scarier than some horror movies. Anyways, Harriet's a fun boss fight. Number 51, Bowser from Super Mario 3D World. Bowser's got a pimp car. Basically, Bowser will drive his pimp car and he'll throw some soccer bombs at you. There's soccer balls that are actually bombs. I'm gonna call them soccer bombs. I like that. I don't know if that's actually what they're called or not. Basically, you just gotta kick them back at his car and destroy it, which is so sad because I love his pimp car so much. It's awesome. There are a few different variations of this boss fight. Each one gets slightly more challenging, but for the most part, it's not going to be that bad. He will breathe some fire at you every once in a while, but that's about it. There will also be some enemies that appear, but again, not really going to get in the way. As long as you focus on chucking the bombs back at Bowser, you're going to be alright. Number 50, Madame Brood. Madame Brood will just chase you around with her chain chomp. What you gotta do is you gotta capture her chain chomp, run away from her, and then as she tries to pull on the leash to bring it back, you gotta uncapture the chain chomp so that flings back at her. And it looks super painful when it hits her in the face. It's actually a pretty fun boss fight, and for the first big one in Super Mario Odyssey, it's alright. Madame Brood is not a bad boss fight in my books. Number 49, Wiggler from Super Mario Sunshine. Wiggler will be running around Gelato Beach like it's, I don't know, a nightclub. I don't know any good analogies for that. Basically, he'll just be running around like crazy, and you gotta try and get these sand things to pop up so that way he gets flipped over. Once you do this, you gotta jump on top of him and ground pound him. It's a pretty fun boss fight, but at times it can just feel a little slow having to wait for him to move around. Number 48, Eelymouth. This boss fight's always just seemed a bit off to me. There's something weird about it. I don't know if it's the controls or the environment or the fact that you're cleaning an eel's teeth, which, by the way, even an eel shouldn't have teeth that disgusting, and they don't even brush their teeth. It's a really interesting boss fight. The controls, like I said, aren't great, but you can tell that's definitely what they were going for. They did not want this to be easy for you. And again, you're cleaning the eel's teeth with your flood pack. It's a bit weird, but it's fun at times, I guess, and it's definitely not the worst boss fight in Mario history. Number 47, Phantomanta. Everyone's favorite. Phantomanta is basically a giant electricity shadow, if that's what it actually is. I don't really know, to be honest. Basically, you gotta spray it with your flood pack so that way it will die, I guess. It will break off into smaller Phantomantas, and you gotta make sure you spray all of them, too. You gotta get all the Phantomanta dead, pretty much. It's a pretty challenging boss fight, especially when it breaks off into smaller Phantomantas, because if you touch any of them, they will hurt you, of course, because they're made of electricity. It's one of the most iconic boss fights from Super Mario Sunshine, and I can see why. It's got a good amount of challenge, and it's kind of fun, too. Number 46, Fiery Dino Piranha. What's different between this Dino Piranha and the other one we talked about earlier is that this one is on fire. Sometimes. Fiery Dino Piranha will sometimes be on fire, sometimes will not. What you gotta do is you gotta wait until Fiery Dino Piranha is not on fire so that you can hit its tail and hurt it. When it is on fire, obviously you don't want to touch it. It makes for a pretty interesting boss fight, and it actually has a lot more strategy than you might think. It can be pretty challenging at times if you're not careful. Number 45, Torque Drift. For this boss fight, you'll capture one of those weird onion-looking things, and you basically gotta jump over a lot of lasers. This boss fight could have been a lot more challenging, and it would have made it a lot more fun as well, but Nintendo decided to make it on the easier side. This boss fight really isn't that challenging if you're good at the game, and it's kind of boring at times. It's kind of fun, don't get me wrong, but it definitely needed to be a lot harder. Number 44, Dig-a-Leg. Dig-a-Leg is a 2D boss fight, sort of, in a 3D Mario game, whatever, doesn't matter. Basically, you're using the spin drill, and you gotta try and hit Dig-a-Leg where the weak point is, so that way you can do damage. The challenge is timing it so that you spin through the planet when Dig-a-Leg isn't moving, that way you don't accidentally hit one of his legs. Dig-a-Leg can be challenging at times, especially when he starts spawning those yellow things, but for the most part, he's not that bad, and he can be fun at times, but he's not always the most interesting boss fight. Number 43, Sorbetty. Sorbetty's actually a pretty interesting boss fight. Sorbetty is basically a planet, but it's rolling after you on another planet. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense when I say it like that, but if you're watching the footage right now, it should make sense. You gotta hit Sorbetty on the nose because it's red. Red always equals weak point in video games. And when you do that a few times, Sorbetty will die, pretty much. I'm surprised we haven't seen more boss fights like this in the Mario Galaxy series, though, considering it's a game about round things you can walk on. That sounded weird when I put it like that. Number 42, Giga Bowser. This boss fight had the potential to be really cool, but it wasn't. It was really well made, don't get me wrong, and actually is a lot of fun, but there's absolutely no challenge, and I say that because you can use a power-up whenever you want, because it's Bowser's Fury. You can collect power-ups like you can collect, I don't know, air. They're everywhere in this game, and you're most likely going to have a lot saved up for this boss fight, so it doesn't even matter if you take damage or not. But I digress, because it's a pretty cool boss fight. It's just kinda long and boring at times. But, hey, it's pretty good. Number 41, Gooper Blooper. Gooper Blooper will just attack you using his arms, pretty much. What you gotta do is you gotta jump on them, and then hold them off his body. Mario, what the heck? First it's babies, now you're ripping the arms off of innocent bloopers? What is your problem, man? Get help! Number 40, Rolladillo. Am I the only one that thinks this guy looks like he belongs in Pokemon? Anyways, Rolladillo will just kind of roll around the planet a little, and you gotta use the rock mushroom to catch up to him and slam into his butt. It's a pretty fun boss fight, but it's not super challenging. Number 39, King Caliente. King Caliente will basically just spew either fireballs or a watermelon at you. That's weird. Anyways, what you gotta do is you gotta spin the watermelon so that it gets flung back at him. Sometimes he'll even block it, so it becomes a game of tennis. It's a pretty fun boss fight, actually. You do fight this guy twice, and the second time you're on these platforms that will start to sink if you stand on them for too long. Obviously, they're sinking into lava, so that's pretty bad. The boss fight itself is basically the same, except this time there's a lot more challenge. King Caliente is a pretty good boss fight, but is obviously pretty easy at times. He is one of the first ones you fight in this game, so that's to be expected. Number 38, Top Maniac. Top Maniac might as well be a Beyblade. He's basically just going to move around the stage, and you gotta try and jump on his head without getting hurt by his spikes at the bottom, or whatever. The things that cut you. I don't know what they're called. You just gotta jump on him, and then you gotta spin him into the electric walls. It's pretty easy, and there are a few enemies that will kind of knock you around a little, and you gotta hope they don't knock you into the electric walls, but they're not really gonna get in the way if you're being careful. It's a pretty fun boss fight, but not that much of a challenge. Number 37, Tarantox. This boss fight is pretty interesting, to say the least. You're basically going to be flinging yourself around a web that has a giant spider in it. What you have to do is you have to try and hit the spider's weak points. There are 5 on the top side of his body, I guess we'll say. There are 4 small ones and 1 big one. You can either go for each individual small weak point or just hit the big one. I don't know why people wouldn't just hit the big one. It's pretty easy to hit and he gets flipped over immediately. Once you flip him over, there are 3 more weak points. If you hit one of these, it'll explode, which is pretty gross, but you gotta do this 3 times to beat the boss fight. The boss fight itself isn't super challenging, but it's very distinct from a lot of other boss fights, and it makes for a pretty interesting experience. Number 36, Bowser from Super Mario Sunshine. As easy as a Bowser boss fight can get, pretty much. You're just using your flood pack to launch yourself up in the air, then ground pounding to destroy 5 different weak points of a bathtub? Okay, that's interesting. Basically, the only challenge here is Bowser casually breathing fire at you, a few bullet bills being launched in your direction, and acid being thrown at you after ground pounding one of the bathtub points. Again, that sounds weird. This boss fight really only takes 2 minutes if you're good at the game, and I've seen my brother do it in like 30 seconds. It's really not that challenging of a boss fight, and if you're good at the game, you're definitely going to be okay. Number 35, Goom Boss. For this boss fight, you're forced to play as Yoshi because you don't have any of the characters unlocked yet. Yoshi will have to eat the Goombas, turn them into eggs, and then throw them at Goom Boss as Goom Boss is constantly running around the stage in the same direction. The Goombas will be following behind him. It's a pretty easy boss fight, but to be honest, it's pretty enjoyable, and for one of the only 3 exclusive boss fights to the DS version of Mario 64, it's pretty good. It makes for a pretty fun experience, and honestly, I like this one. Number 34, Bugaboom. For this boss fight, you'll be using the bee mushroom. What you gotta do is you gotta fly around the stage and wait for Bugaboom to basically be flying upright, I guess. You gotta use this as an opportunity to ground pound Bugaboom and do some damage. The rest of the time, Bugaboom will be flying sideways, and you can't ground pound him. So, that's the challenge. It's not super challenging, really, but it does make for a pretty fun experience, and it's not a bad boss fight at the end of the day. Number 33, Undergrunt Gunner. This is a pretty interesting boss fight, and we don't see many like this in the Mario series. You fight this guy 3 different times. The first time you gotta take advantage of the bee mushroom and fly over to where he is on the stage so that you can ground pound his shield thing, and yeah, that's pretty much it. The second time you gotta take advantage of the spring mushroom, and you gotta bounce up to where he is and ground pound him that way. The third time you gotta fling watermelons at him. That got weird fast. Anyways, it's a pretty fun boss fight, and I wish we could see more like this in the Mario series. Nothing too spectacular or anything, but just enough to kind of keep the player interested. Number 32, Mecha Wiggler. I do actually really enjoy this boss fight. It's extremely unique for the Mario franchise, and it's a ton of fun. The problem is that it can be very easy at times. You capture a tank, and you gotta basically fire shots at this Wiggler. This Wiggler will be kind of running around different areas, whether it's the building or the ground where you are. It's pretty easy, but it's just a lot of fun, and it's really cool seeing a Mario boss fight in the form of a shooter, I guess. You don't really see that every day. Number 31, Mecha Bowser. Another boss fight in the form of a shooter. Basically, this boss fight will test how good you are at aiming. You'll be moving around a roller coaster, and you'll be collecting rockets that you're supposed to fire at Mecha Bowser. The challenge is that it's very easy to miss Mecha Bowser. There will even be bullet bills chasing you down that you gotta be aware of. This is an insanely fun boss fight, and it's one of the most iconic ones from Super Mario Sunshine. Number 30, Glamdozer. This is a pretty fun boss fight. You gotta use the flip thingies that will basically flip you to the other side of the planet, and use those to attack Glamdozer because her weak point is at the bottom of her, I guess, if that makes any sense. You gotta do this 3 times to win. Each time, Glamdozer gets progressively harder, though. The first phase, Glamdozer is not a challenge at all. She's just barely even moving. The second time, Glamdozer will actually move a bit faster, and the third time, Glamdozer will get really mad and will start shooting fireballs at you. If these fireballs hits one of the flip thingies, it becomes inaccessible for a while because it's obviously on fire. This boss fight can get challenging at times, but there is very easy ways to cheese it, so it can be really easy, but it can also be kind of a challenge. It really depends on how good you are at the game. But all in all, it's pretty fun, and when you play it the way it was intended to be played, it's pretty enjoyable. Number 29, Histocrat. Histocrat's a lot of fun. Histocrat is this giant, I want to say, eel-looking thing, and he'll be just kind of chilling there most of the time. What you gotta do is you gotta use the other eels that will spawn out of the ground with plates on their faces to jump up and hit him. There are many cat suits you can also get as well throughout this boss fight that make it a lot easier. This boss fight can be really easy, but it's a lot of fun as well, and it's one of the most iconic ones from 3D World. Number 28, Queen Histocrat. This boss fight's basically the exact same, but it's a little bit harder. I enjoy this one a bit more because again it has a bit more added challenge. I mean, it's not that much harder, but it is just a little bit more enjoyable. It is also fun when you get to fight Histocrat and Queen Histocrat at the same time. It makes for a pretty fun challenge. Number 27, Motley Boss Blob. This is a pretty interesting boss fight, I guess. The main gimmick here is that this one weird jester looking guy turns into a really big blob looking thing. He'll then jump around the stage and you gotta run away from him. It's not that challenging to do. You then wait until he eventually breaks off into a bunch of small blobs and you gotta jump on his head. It's pretty easy, and the boss fight also revolves a lot around the double cherry, which is kind of weird considering it doesn't really add anything to the boss fight, but it's still pretty cool nonetheless. The second time you fight this guy, whenever he jumps, he creates shockwaves, and it makes it a bit more challenging, but it's still not that bad. All in all, this is one of the more enjoyable boss fights in 3D World. Number 26, Camella. Camella will basically just be attacking you using a bunch of different spells. What you gotta do is you gotta wait until she uses the green one, which spawns a Koopa shell, and you gotta use that to attack her. It's a pretty easy boss fight, but it's also pretty enjoyable and makes for a good experience. Number 25, Major Burrows. Major Burrows is a mole that will obviously chase you by digging through the ground. What you gotta do is you gotta wait till he pops his head out so that way you can ground pound and then he'll be forced out of the ground. I didn't know Mario's ground pounds were that powerful. Anyways, he'll just start running away from you and you gotta spin him to do some damage. You do this enough times and you win. This boss fight's not that challenging, but it does get pretty challenging when he starts moving a lot faster. Timing your ground pounds can become a bit of a challenge once he does get faster. It's a pretty good boss fight and it's one of the more iconic ones from Mario Galaxy. Number 24, King Lakitu, or Giga Lakitu. I don't know which one the actual name is, but I'm gonna call him King Lakitu. King Lakitu just looks like a spoiled little brat. I don't know why, but that's the vibe he gives off. What you gotta do is you gotta wait till he throws spiny shells at you, eat them with Yoshi, and fling them back at him. Aiming this can become a little challenging as the boss fight progresses, but it's really not that bad. King Lakitu will also use several lightning attacks on you that you gotta watch out for. Number 23, Squizzard. Squizzard will basically just attack you by throwing either sand balls or bombs. What you gotta do is you gotta get a fire flower and wait till he opens his mouth to start chucking fireballs at him. It's a pretty interesting boss fight, but at times it can get a little challenging. If you're not careful, you can very easily get hit by Squizzard's sand balls or bombs. Anyways, moving on. Number 22, Prince Picante. Prince Picante will be skating around in whatever that is over a field of ice. You will also be skating around over this field of ice and be trying to avoid his attacks. He'll be firing many fireballs at you, but you gotta wait till he fires a watermelon so that you can fling it back at him. It's a pretty fun boss fight and is actually really enjoyable. Number 21, Gobblegut. Gobblegut is this big dragon that will chase you around this planet. He'll eventually try and dive into you, which will cause him to dive through the planet, and what you gotta do is you gotta use this as an opportunity to hit his weak points. He has 6 weak points, and once you hit all 6 of them, you'll win. You can also hit his weak points if you're really good at the game, even without him diving into you, but that's pretty challenging, and I'd recommend just waiting till he tries to eat you. It's pretty fun, this boss fight, but it's kind of easy at times and doesn't always pose much of a challenge. Number 20, Fiery Gobblegut. The boss fight's basically the exact same, except now you gotta be a little bit more careful when hitting Gobblegut's weak points because his body's now on fire, meaning that if you touch it, it's not gonna end well. Number 19, Petey Piranha. Petey Piranha is an extremely fun boss fight. Petey Piranha, the first time you fight him, will just be kinda chillin'. He won't really be moving around all that much, but he will occasionally try to vomit, which is really weird. You gotta use that as an opportunity to spray water in his mouth so that he gets really fat, apparently, and then you ground pound his stomach, and that hurts him. Now that I explain it, it sounds really weird. The second time you fight PD Piranha, he'll be kind of flying around Bianco Hills, and you gotta try and knock him out of the sky before you can attack him. You do this by using your Flood Pack. It's a really fun boss fight, actually, and honestly, I think it's kind of underrated. For the first boss fight in Sunshine, it's really good. Number 18, Bowser Jr. Bowser Jr. will fight you on his airship. What you gotta do is you gotta grab Koopa shells and throw them at his airship. You do this 5 times and you win. After you hit him 3 times, the airship will go from being adjacent to you to being pointed directly at you. That means you have slightly less room to hit him. Bowser Jr. will attack you using cannonballs, bullet bills, and there will also be a couple Kameks around you gotta watch out for. The boss fight itself isn't overly challenging, but it's really fun, and I love it so much. Number 17, Bouldergeist. This guy gets talked about quite often. I mean, I don't know why, but he is a fun boss fight. Basically, you start off and he's in the middle of the stage, just summoning rocks to throw at you. You gotta wait till he summons a black rock, which will have a Bomb-Boo in it, and then you use that to slam it into him, and part of him will blow up, I guess. As the boss fight progresses, he'll eventually grow hands, which makes things really challenging, because you gotta try and hit him with the Bomb-Boo without hitting one of his hands. And eventually he also starts moving too, so that's fun. It's a really cool boss fight, actually, and it's no secret why fans really like it. Sure, it can kind of be slow at times, but it's super fun and not really overly challenging, but also not overly easy either. It's a great difficulty level, and it's just a fun boss fight. That's all it is. Number 16, Knucklo-Tech. Knucklo-Tech will just attack you using his hands. What you gotta do eventually is you gotta wait until one of his hands hits a thing of ice and then gets really agitated, I guess, and you use that as an opportunity to capture one of his hands and punch him in the face. It's really funny, actually, and I enjoy this boss fight a lot. Number 15. I'm not comfortable enough with my French accent to try and pronounce this, so Google, this one's on you.
Mollusque lanceur.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try that. This guy's pretty fun. You basically chase him around using one of those... I forgot what they're called from Odyssey, but they basically can fly through the air using water. You can't use too much water or else you'll have to recharge going back into the ocean, which isn't that big of a deal, but you want to try and get this guy pretty fast when you're in the air, so that way you don't have to worry about that. What you gotta do is you gotta spray his head a bunch of times so that way his lava cools, which, why does this guy have lava on his head when he gets angry? That's kind of weird. Anyways, it's a pretty fun boss fight. It can be slow at times if you're not doing very well, but if you are doing pretty good at the boss fight, it's gonna be pretty fun and it's gonna be pretty fast-paced. Number 14, Cookatiel. This is a pretty fun boss fight. For this boss fight, you take control of a lava bubble of all enemies, and you gotta use your platforming skills to basically jump up using the pink lava to hit Cookatiel. It's pretty fun, and it can be pretty easy at times, but all in all, I enjoy this one. Number 13, Lord of Lightning. Is this Mario Odyssey or Dark Souls? Anyways, this dragon will be using a lot of lightning attacks to try and attack you, but you gotta wait until he uses the big one to attack you, and then once he does that, you jump on his head, you use your cap to get rid of that thing covering his weak point, then you ground pound that, and rinse and repeat, you'll win. It's pretty fun and actually presents a lot of challenge. It's a really good boss fight, and honestly, it's one of the best. Number 12, Bowser from Super Mario 64. This is a really fun boss fight. What you gotta do is you gotta try and run around Bowser to grab him by the tail, and then you swing him and try to aim it so that he lands on one of the bombs at the edges of the battlefield. You gotta do this a few times to win, but Bowser will not let you have this win. He'll use a lot of attacks like running at you, fire, all that stuff to try and stop you in your tracks. Eventually, Bowser will make the stage really small and in the shape of a star, so it becomes challenging after that point. For Super Mario 64 standards, this is a fantastic boss fight. Number 11, Bowser from Super Mario Odyssey. This boss fight was kind of underwhelming, to be honest, especially for such a great Mario game. But I digress because it's pretty good. This isn't counting the part afterwards where you actually get to play as Bowser, because if it were counting that part, it would probably be at number 1 on the list. This is just counting the part where you actually fight Bowser. Both times you fight Bowser, you're just trying to use his hat to punch him a lot, and then he gets slammed into stuff. Once you do this a few times, you'll win. Bowser will use a variety of attacks, such as more hats, fire, and other stuff as well. He'll also start throwing boulders and stuff like that at you when you start to get close. This boss fight, as underwhelming as it can be, still makes for a pretty fun experience. Number 10, Mega Leg. Mega Leg is an extremely fun boss fight. I love how you climb up him Shadow of the Colossus style. The main thing being thrown at you here is bullet bills, which you gotta use to your advantage to destroy Mega Leg's weak point at the top of his head. Once you do this, the Grand Star will be yours. It's really cool, and honestly, it's one of the best boss fights out there. The only thing I wish was a bit different about this is that maybe after you hit his weak point once, you have to climb up him again, because it's kind of easy how you just get to stay up there. But I digress, because it's a really cool boss fight nonetheless. Number 9, King Fin. This boss fight's so cool. You get to swim around this amazing underwater atmosphere while King Fin is out looking for you. He'll use a lot of attacks on you, but what you gotta do is you gotta try and find a bunch of Koopa shells to hurl at him, and then he'll take some damage. You also gotta be mindful of your air, so you gotta be on the lookout for air bubbles as well. It's such a cool boss fight, and it has an awesome feel to it. It feels like you really are in danger, and it feels like an actual shark attack at times. Number 8, Mega Hammer. Mega Hammer is this giant robot being operated by Bowser Jr. What you gotta do is you gotta use Yoshi to eat the bullet bills Mega Hammer uses on you and throw them right back at his weak points. To get the one at the back, you gotta make sure you use the launch star so that way you can hit it before Mega Hammer turns around. It's a really fun boss fight and makes for one of the best Bowser Jr. boss fights of all time. Number 7, Boomsday Machine. Another thing built by Bowser Jr. to stop you in your tracks. The Boomsday Machine is this giant tower that you gotta get to the top of using the Cloud Flower. There are certain areas of the battlefield where air is being projected upwards, and you can use this to move your cloud upwards to hit Bowser Jr. on the head. It's a really fun boss fight, and the difficulty progression is really cool as well, because eventually the tower basically becomes a tank and starts moving around the battlefield. Bowser Jr. will use several attacks on you, like fire bars, electricity, and more, to try and stop you, of course. It's an awesome boss fight, and is by far the best Bowser Jr. boss fight of all time. Number 6, Bowser from Super Mario Galaxy 2. Kind of an underwhelming boss fight compared to Galaxy 1, but still good nonetheless. Bowser is really big, and he's chasing you around this planet, pretty much. He'll use a couple of attacks on you like fire, punches, and meteors, and what you gotta do is you gotta wait till he hits you with meteors and then punches the stage, so that way the meteors become active again, I guess, and you can use them to ground pound them at Bowser. It's kind of easy, and honestly could be a lot more challenging, but it's still pretty fun either way. Now, at the end, when you're ground pounding the meteors at Bowser as he's trying to chase you down, that part's really underwhelming, and honestly, I don't like that part very much, but the main part where he's actually fighting you on the planet and all that is really good. Number 5, Mecha Brutal. Mecha Brutal is an extremely underrated boss fight. What you gotta do is you gotta take control of one of the pokey things that can poke things with their nose. You use this to poke bombs back at the Mecha Brutal. Once this happens, the Mecha Brutal's legs will become partly destroyed and you can climb up them. Once you do this, you can ground pound one of the Brutals and move on with your life. Once you do this 4 times, you win. It's a really fun boss fight and honestly presents a decent amount of challenge too. The second time you fight Mecha Brutal, you're using a hammer bro and you gotta hammer the legs instead of using bombs. It makes it slightly more challenging. Once you do that, you gotta jump up to the top and then ground pound one of the Brutals. Both fights are really good and present the exact right amount of challenge, and it's so much fun to defeat them. Number 4, Bowser from Super Mario Galaxy. I really like this boss fight, especially because you're actually for once getting up close and personal with Bowser. For once, there's no switch that sends him into lava or power up that helps you automatically win. You gotta actually fight him all by yourself. And I love that. The first planet you fight Bowser on, he'll be using this boulder move that will basically make him roll after you. What you gotta do is you gotta hit him on the head when it's visible. It's about the timing here. It's pretty easy. Then on the second planet, you gotta use those green bouncy things to hit him, and then he'll go spinning and you hit him again. Again, pretty easy. But the third time, it's a bit more challenging. Bowser will be using several attacks on you here, but the main one is when he starts jumping at you. Once he does this, you gotta try and get him to jump on one of the blue circle things on the ground, so that way it'll break and he'll catch on fire. You then gotta spin him a few times, so that way he'll get hurt. It's an extremely fun boss fight, and it's no secret why fans love it to this day. It's extremely intense, and it's the perfect end to Super Mario Galaxy. Number 3, Meowser. This boss fight is extremely cool. Bowser, for once, actually takes advantage of the power-ups and becomes Meowser. It's really cool how he does this, and he'll attack you in many different ways. What you gotta do is you gotta climb up the giant tower he made while avoiding all of Meowser's attacks. At the halfway point, he'll even clone himself into several different versions of himself using the double cherry. Once you get to the top, you gotta hit Meowser standing on a POW block, which, why are you standing on a POW block, Meowser? Did you really not think we would try to hit it? Whatever. You hit the POW block a few times, Meowser will go flying, and that's the end. It's an extremely fun boss fight and feels really intense at times. Number 2, Bowser from Super Mario 3D Land. Yeah, I said it. 3D Land had a better final Bowser boss fight than 3D World. Problem? Look, I honestly think Bowser's attacks are just more creative this time around, and I find this boss fight just to be a bit more fast-paced and challenging. Maybe that's just me, but I personally find this one to be a bit better. It's very similar to Meowser, except instead of climbing up a giant tower, you're more climbing up a giant tower in a lava setting. So, yeah. I also like how Bowser will use barrels as a reference to Donkey Kong. I think that's pretty cool. Number 1, Fury Bowser. Hands down the best Mario boss fight of all time. While this boss fight can be really easy at times, it's still so much fun. You grow to the size of Bowser, and it's insane. You basically just gotta avoid Bowser's attacks and wait for him to try and attack you by going up into a shell and slamming himself into the ground. Once he does that a few times, you can ground pound him, doing a decent amount of damage. There are even other ways you can attack him too. If you're Giga Cat Mario, you can also scratch him by running up and scratching him and then running away really fast. Or you can even grab some of the spikes he spawns on the stage and throw them at him, so that way he has damage dealt to him. The thing I like most about this boss fight is, once again, Mario actually has to fight Bowser one-on-one. There's no switch that he can use to send Bowser into lava. There's no power-up he can... Well, actually, he is using a power-up. Anyways, it's just really fun, and it feels really intense, and for once it feels like Mario actually really and truly has to face Bowser in his darkest form. Wow, we just managed to rank every single 2D and 3D Mario boss fight there is. Honestly, I really enjoyed making this video. And the last one too. Both of them were a lot of fun to make. Now please, please, please don't ask me to make a combined list of the two games. Okay? I don't want to have to make a ranking every Mario boss fight video, okay? There are already over like 100 of them. Just let me split them off into 2 videos, please and thank you. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I'll see you all next time, but until then, keep being awesome Nintendo fans. Peace out.